Oh, Muscowpetung, good day, Amawaste. Me and Namakota, Makiape Woptaka Tioshpae. Mitaku ye ina chegakin Tioshpae. Mitaku ye ade, Little Black Bear First Nation. Good morning and welcome to this special Orange Shirt Day presentation here. My name is Brad Bellegarde, and it's my privilege to be able to be here. Things have changed a little this year, so usually there is an opportunity for us to have in-person contact, but unfortunately we can't, but we are here still virtually. And I'm holding a pouch of tobacco right now. First of all, I just want to recognize that we are here on Treaty 4 territory. And being that it's Treaty 4, that's the homeland of the Dakota, the Lakota, the Cree, the Saulteaux, and the Métis. And I also want to acknowledge our funders, SAS Culture, and our partners in education, the Saskatchewan Teachers Federation. This tobacco right here that I'm holding is something that's very important from an Indigenous perspective. Our people always utilize this tobacco to create dialogue and to start things off in a good way. I'm going to turn this tobacco over and hand it to our knowledge keeper and our elder, Tim Poitras.
Pilamaya. Wahanchka hemelo. Wuptuga tioshwe. We wachanga wichipi na cha. Ampeto ashte. Lewi chekia. Before we do anything of great importance, we always acknowledge that tobacco, it's a medicine. And when we smoke our pipes and the smoke rises, it goes up to the Creator. Because we are the good and we are the bad, we're not worthy enough to speak to the Creator directly. So having said that, I'm going to ask blessings of the Creator to put a blessing on what we're doing today for our youth across the province. So I'm going to pray in my language and I'll pray in English for your benefit. Ha tishina tanka wambliglashka tunkashina ina unchumaka. Wahanchka hemelo tunkashla me chaknukashin we och beatanya sapa wazia luta we oyong pate itoka gatiska imakia pi na oyate na su chake tunkashla lewo chozni wushki wushmpi wuyushki tunkashla pilama tunkashla patoshte. I pray to the grandfathers in the four directions to look down upon us with pity, strengthen our minds, our bodies, our hearts. Open our eyes, our ears, so we can hear each other, understand each other, get to know each other in a healthier, better way. For without your kindness and pity, we can go nowhere. I ask that you take pity upon our teachers and our young people, the students. Put a blessing of growth on them in that way. Hawamakashkanyas and Mitakias and all my relations.
Oh, thank you, Tim. I just wanted to touch base about, we're standing beside what us as Indigenous people consider to be something of very importance. They're the ones that fly the highest above the ground. They could take our message. And our message is actually the prayers that he actually said today. So I want to thank Tim for being able to spend some time here today and start us off in a good way. We're going to have a good discussion about Orange Shirt Day, what it means, why we're here, why we're wearing orange shirts, talk about residential schools. Tim is actually a residential school survivor. I'm a first generation non-residential school survivor. That means my parents went to residential school, but I didn't. But I want to thank you guys for tuning in. There might even be some rapping. So we'll be back shortly. We're going to shift locations and we'll be right back. Hi, and we're back. As you can see, we both have masks. It is important to have those masks, but we're safely distanced apart, and we're just gonna have a conversation for you, talk to you about what it was like. I'm sure a lot of you, I know that there's people tuned in from Isle Across. We have Mother Teresa Middle School, we have St. Michael, we have Campbell Collegiate. We have a wide range of people that are tuning in right now, but for us, it's very important to just have conversations in our Indigenous way. Nothing was ever written down. It's always an oral story. But just something as simple as sitting down with someone to share their story is very important. So that's why that tobacco, that's the opening up the discussion and the dialogue. And we really want to encourage you all to reflect on the answers or questions that you may have. This day is a day about education. It's not a day to bring up hurt. It's a day to actually look towards the future and just learn from the past, because we all learn from mistakes. So once again, Tim, thanks for joining us here today. And I guess I was just talking about the first day of school. A lot of us remember our first day of school. My first day of school, I remember I didn't like it, and I wanted to go back home, and I got to go back home. Tell me what you remember about your first day of school.
Well, I guess I just wanted to start out by saying before my first day of school, I'm fourth generation residential school survivor. So that means my parents went, my grandparents, my great grandparents went. So that's 4 generations of Western influence and conditioning. I just wanted to say, for many of you students, your first day of school has been very, very memorable. My first day of school was kind of a nightmare. I remember my grandmother holding me in front of the nun, and it was Sister Rainey. She said, "Oh, don't worry, Alice, we're going to take care of your grandson." So as soon as my grandmother got out of the room and out of sight, she turned and she slapped me and made my nose bleed. So the whole place was kind of a really harsh environment. Whereas right after the nun slapped me, then I had my peer group, meaning the other boys in the playroom, started picking on me because I was a newcomer. So my first day of school was really not that great. I had to overcome many barriers as a young man.
Now, when we talk about our first day of school, I know for lunch, I got to go home at lunchtime actually, and I eat at home and stuff. Well, do you remember what you ate that first day? Do you remember?
Well, I just kind of wanted to set the context as well for our students. We were all assigned numbers. I don't know why. I'll be 60 in 2 weeks. The first number assigned to me was little boys 21. That was my number, and why I remember that all these years, it's kind of negative conditioning. But to overcome that, the food was mainly for many years I couldn't eat oatmeal, because by the time they cooked it at 5 o'clock in the morning and you were served about 7, it was very cold. So I didn't care for oatmeal for many years until my late wife started cooking it fresh. So I like oatmeal now, but the diet wasn't really as good. I mean, like the caregivers got the better diet and the students didn't get as good a diet.
It makes me think like you had a routine then every day. We all have routines, but sometimes we could switch those routines up. It's like, I feel sick, I'm not going to go to school today, or you get to do different activities throughout the day. What was a routine like then at that? Like, if I think about it, you must have been 5 or 6 years old?
Well, it was there was a series of things happening. I went to a Catholic-run boarding school, and Sister Grey Eyes, when I first started school, was teaching grade 2 in the gymnasium, and when I moved into grade 2, she was the grade 2. She taught catechism, so we were kind of conditioned that we had, I guess, the devil on the left side, and the angel was on the right, so we had to sleep on the left side. So the thing was that we went through a series of conditionings all at once to take us away. When we were talking about that, what was the question again, Brad? I got off on
your routine.
The routine. So we did wake us up at 6. We had from 6 to 6:15 to shower and brush our teeth. We had to go down and be in the breakfast hall. The girls ate on one side, the boys ate on the other. We were kind of ostracized. We didn't get to commingle. So we had to have our breakfast. We had to be out of the dining room by 7:15. We had from 7:15 to 7:45 to get our chores done. And then we had free time to catch up on our homework or other things we had to do if we didn't finish the night before, because they had 1 hour study after school to get our homework done. And sometimes it was a little bit more. Like for myself, I was dyslexic, so I did not really do well in school. I needed the extra time to get caught up on homework.
How did that affect you then? What was it like if you didn't get your homework done right or on time? Was there any type of punishment for that?
Oh, it was kind of corporal harsh punishment. Just so the students know, I've had my eardrums rebuilt twice on both sides. from the priests and nuns and the teachers and caregivers being frustrated and slapping. So I've had both my eardrums blown out twice from residential school. So I have a disability today because of that. And many survivors have hearing challenges because of that worldview. So yes, it was kind of harsh.
Was there, so now I know that I have had the privilege of knowing you for many years now, going to ceremonies and relearning who I am as a First Nations person, as a Namakota. Did all of that teaching of being a First Nations person, did that disappear while you were at residential school?
Well, it was something that we were conditioned to be ashamed of. Through catechism and that I mentioned earlier, Father Lacombe's ladder, anything from an Indian worldview, we were sure to go to hell. One of the things I remember the nuns and the priests and the brothers calling us was "les sauvages," means little savages. So they kind of left us with we were less than. So for many of us that leave these institutions, it was very easy for us to go into the armies, graduate to our provincial, federal settings, or go into factories because we were conditioned on a certain routine. I still have routines that my house is got to be fairly neat, my yard's got to be fairly neat, and I can't be late, Brad.
I know that. I know that. So okay, now let's jump forward to say the later years of school. Now, was sports like? I remember you told me the story about like you'd have to run up the hill.
Oh yeah, they used to get us up in the morning in the spring, and everybody would have to run. So they'd wake us up at about 5:45, and we used to have to run down through Main Street in LeBret up to the Red and White store, and then we'd have to run up to there's a church up on the hill, and then we'd have to run down the face of that, and then back up towards the Mady Farm. So I know lots of our teams, we were always taken first in the track and fields when we would play Indian Head, Fort Capel, Belcaris, and we'd even have our own intramural track and field against Maryville, Muscowpetung. We'd have our own competitions with basketball, hockey, all of these things.
And those were other day schools too? Those were other boarding schools?
Those were other residential schools.
Yeah, so now after residential school then, like I'm proud to say that you are someone who leads a lot of ceremony in my life, and for a lot of people around not just in Saskatchewan, but a lot of places. So what motivated you to like want to relearn your culture after all that trauma?
Well, I just wanted to start out by telling the students, I want you students to practice saying Ocheti, Shakoi, Oyate. Ocheti, Shakoi, Oyate. People of the Seven Councils Fires, which are the Dakota, Nakota, Lakota people. My mother was Cree from Gordon's. I just wanted to say that when I went back to relearn my culture and my spirituality, when I left that institution, I had a very low self-esteem. It was easy to fall victim to a negative lifestyle. I challenge you students to lead a drug and alcohol-free lifestyle because you're going to have a better way of looking at the world. Although I leave that institution and I did those things for a while, my baby's 37 years old. He's going to be 38 next month. My oldest is 41. They've never seen me other than normal. So I started leading a good, healthy lifestyle at an early age. I go back to the spirituality when, our AFN Chief Brad Bellegarde and all them were going to university. I go to the ceremonies and I started learning that valid form of education as well.
What has it done for you then?
It's given me my identity. I didn't speak my language. I can pray in my own language. I'm not as fluent as I'd like to be, but it's given me my identity of what we were, who we were, and how we were. So I don't need drugs and alcohol. I just need to go to the ceremonies to get my strength.
So from a school perspective, then what's your thought? Like, how does it make you feel when you get invited into different classrooms now that you are done with residential school? Now you have grandchildren that are in class. Maybe some of them are viewing right now. But how does it make you feel to go into classrooms to talk about that identity?
Well, some of my grandchildren over at Mother Teresa's had invited me in to do residential school interviews, talk about our traditional worldview. So going into the classroom, knowing that my ancestors, my relatives that have from the past, that I'm influencing the future so we can have a better worldview, a healthier way of looking at things. It excites me.
I know for me, growing up here in Regina, I still have friends I have a friend from grade 1 still, and I'm a lot older than grade 1. I'll say that. I'm a lot older than grade 1, but I have friends still from school throughout my school years, and I'm still best friends with some of them from high school. Do you have friends from school still?
Most of my friends, unfortunately, have succumbed to, they're not around today. But I do have some friends that are around. It's kind of nice because we went to residential schools together. We went back to the spirituality and the culture to visit and re-see who we were as the past, but change our life. So it's good to see lots of my old school buddies in ceremony, praying together. They come every year from Chega King all over to Tonkanaji, which is Standing Buffalo, Carity Kettle, as well as Cowsis, some from Pasquas, Muscowpetung. So I've got many nations fishing lake, as well as Muscowpetung. So it's good to see some of them turning their lives around and being kind of curious about the culture and the spirituality.
So for a lot of people across Canada and even in the United States, they had boarding schools. That identity was lost. It's a lot of people are just in their infancy when it's coming to learning who they are and about their culture, about territories, about the way of life and how it was when we think about culture and identity. What would you tell like kids how do I learn?
Well, I just wanted to say that the youngest I've seen, when I say Wio Wachunga with Chipi, that's the Sundance, the youngest I've seen do that was 4 days, no food and water, was 13, and the oldest was 74. So they can learn at any age, and that's one good thing about our culture and spirituality, is it's not like when you start kindergarten or grade 1. You said you just finished grade 1 a little while ago for the students. He's grade 5. He's teaching it now. I'm just teasing. But I just wanted to say that for the most part, the culture and the spirituality is more inclusive. I've got some grandsons that fill the pipe for me when I go out and do different things. They help me with Sweat Lodge. They participate with Sweat Lodge. We have to realize that each and every one of us was brought here through the spirit of a woman. And in my language, I'd say mihasani, meaning the other half of my skin, the other half of my home, the other half of my reality. She's gone now, but she helped. She was an educator, and I used to help her as well with teaching. So we need to go back to, like, we're dealing with times where the lack of respect for our females, all due to colonization, residential school, the 60s scoop, all of these historical things that impacted our people. We need to go back and rediscover our culture, our heritage, our spirituality, so we can bring in these good values in our life, so we can have healthy tomorrows, healthy students, healthy leaders. Some of you students don't realize it, but you're going to be policy makers. Some of you may be chief and counselors. You could be politicians. You can be anything they want to be.
And I just want to touch base. So we're both wearing these awesome orange shirts. An orange shirt, being it's September, this was the time of year that you would have went back to school as a kid. A lot of our viewers, a lot of youth now, they're all going back to school, and for a lot of them, they're excited. I know, like, even my stepson at home was just excited to get back in the classroom. Around this time of year, do you remember, did you spend your summers going back home?
Well, I'd spend them going back home. I would help some of the old people when they had rain dance. But for many people that don't realize, when you're negatively impacted, I suffer what is known as seasonal depression. So if it wasn't for the Sweat Lodge, going to those ceremonies, hunting in the fall, it kind of gives me a reconnection with the land and the environment. That Sweat Lodge represents our mother's womb, so when we're having a hard time, we go in there to rid ourselves of the negative feelings, to be reborn, to be recreated, to change the way we think and see the world. So those ceremonies have more healing than most people realize. We're kind of the best kept secret here in North America.
Yeah, so now for kids in schools, then I guess they're excited to be back. when we talk about Orange Shirt Day, and the person who started, her name was Phyllis Webstad. She did. She got her shirt taken away. It was a orange dress, I believe. But this day started in 2013. Was the first ever. What does Orange Shirt Day mean to you?
Well, it's a chance to acknowledge our painful past. It's a chance to inspire my students, telling them the reality of how harsh those environments were, because we want a better tomorrow based off of our children don't have to experience those kinds of atrocities to be stronger, healthier, happier people for the future. Mm-hmm. So that's why I'm here today, is to share my understanding, my experience to create a better tomorrow for our children.
Now, I was thinking about this yesterday too. Myself, I'm a first generation non-residential school survivor. That means that my sister went to residential school, my parents went, my grandparents, a lot of generations went to residential school. And growing up, I wasn't really shown that very, very motherly nurturing, like in the form of hugs. I was shown love in different forms, but not the hugs and not the I love yous all the time. And was that something that was missing when you were growing up too?
Well, growing up as a kid, my dad never did say he loved me, although they showed me they loved me. They grew up in ways where they weren't freely allowed to show their true emotions. So one of the things I did when I became a father is I tell my sons I loved them. I give my sons kisses, my grandsons kisses, my granddaughters kisses. I have 5 additional adopted sons and 4 adopted girls. I wasn't blessed with girls, but I have 6 granddaughters. So it's really important for me to break that cycle and to break that stigma and to show them love and how to love.
So was it hard for you then, like to do that? Like it's without
No,
having that?
I think it came natural when you go back to the culture and the spirituality. It's embraced total care for each other. It was easy to parent that way once. I said, my oldest is 41 and the youngest is 37. They've never seen me other than normal. I wasn't good at it in the beginning, but with practice it became easier, it became natural, it became smoother to express the love. Because it's one of the things we need to survive.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's very important to point out. And you mentioned we all came here through the spirit of the woman. You know, and our society has kind of shifted our worldview as First Nations people and Indigenous people to kind of split that, not make it level. What is the message that you'd give to kids, like young men growing up, to how to properly show that?
Well, we were conditioned in a negative way. Like Sister Rainey slapped me and made my nose bleed. So we're conditioned to receive love. We have to do certain things. So we're conditioned in those institutions in a negative way. But in a positive way, our spirituality, when we look at that sweat lodge, it represents our mother's womb. We go back in there to be reborn, recreated. So we start learning that natural love. And my mentor, Sam Muscowpetung, his Indian name is Matoblihicha. Him and his late wife, Eileen, and my wife would all gang up on me because I like to pout when I couldn't get my way. So they'd be
No, you don't like to pout.
No, I'm good at it. I'm a pro, believe me. But they would tease me about my behavior. So I started looking at myself. I started doing self-reflecting, and I started making some change in a good way so that we could have a healthier, happier home.
No, that's good. And I think that's so when we're talking to the kids out there, it's very important. If you have sisters, older sisters, don't be mean to them.
Or cousins.
Or cousins.
Or even other females.
Yeah, because it's important for us to have that balance. And you're right. You're right with that. Thanks for sharing a little bit of that. For final thought, I guess a final thought for viewers out there, we have people all the way up north. We have grades 12 all the way down to, I think, grade 5 or grade 6 joining in. I think this is great for you guys to be able to be a part of this. What's one thing you'd want to tell them about moving forward and being a good neighbor, I guess, to our non-Indigenous and Indigenous brothers? How can we make that environment better?
Well, one of the things I just wanted to say, this Being Orange t-shirt, we have to acknowledge our painful past. We have to realize where we are at today. What changes do we need to make for ourselves to be a healthy citizen for tomorrow? And then having said that, when they signed Treaty 4 here, the headman that signed Treaty 4 is take our children and educate them, but send us your eldest sons and we'll teach them our way of life. Together we'll build this country together. So we're still waiting for our opportunity to be a part of the up and coming changes that need to happen. So we're more included. So for our students, I want them to get a good education. You need to enter these fields of politics so that we can have our equal place within society and its development.
Mm-hmm. Well, I want to thank you for taking some time to speak to us and speak to everybody out there. One thing that I really think is a good way for kids to learn is storytelling. And even if that be a real story or just a story that has a meaning at the end or a message, those are all great ways. And I want to share a story myself, but I'm going to do it in a rap. So I hope you guys can like that.
So I just wanted to say we've got no word for goodbye. It's always we'll see you later. So in my language, it's Doksha Ake.
Doksha Ake.
Uh-huh.
I'm InfoRed. What's up? How you guys doing? I have a story about my parents. My parents went to residential school. Same residential school that Tim went to is Qu'Appelle Indian Residential School. It's located in the Qu'Appelle Valley in LeBret, just across the lake from Fort Qu'Appelle. And I was sitting at home one day. I was actually at school. I was in university, and I was thinking, I want to write a song and tell a story in a song. That was always tough for me to write songs. And I figured I wanted to learn about their first day of school because I would go into schools and talk to them. And I really wanted to learn about residential school. So this song is called I Remember. And it is a story about their first day of school and what they remember. So I hope you guys can enjoy it. I dedicate this song when I created it to all residential school survivors, all kids that have that family lineage that went to residential schools, because it takes a community, or as we say, tioshpae, to raise a child. And through song is the best way I can do it. I was playing outside, just a little man, with the world in the palm of my hand. A little kid living life. A red truck and a man in a black robe. They told my mom, call him Father Joe. So we call him Father Joe. I saw a tear in my mother's eye. I let out a cry, but I didn't know why. Piled up on the back of a truck, it had a flatbed on it and the road was rough. My hands are shaky, feeling sick to my stomach. Where are they taking us? Who could have done it? My body is nervous. Why am I leaving? What is the purpose? What is the reason? Now I'm just a lost little kid looking for my mother in this life that I live all alone on the road that I'm traveling, and all I really want to do is just go home. I remember walking through the doors of the school. It was cool in September. They gave us clothes, put numbers on the sweater, said this'll be your name till you're home in December. They put powder on my head, threw me in the shower, then lined us up for bed. They took my braid away. They took my braids away. And this isn't me singing, so I'm not going to sing along with it. So that was the first day. That was just getting to school. This next part is the first night, because they had to sleep there overnight. They couldn't go home. And that's what we got to remember when we think of residential school survivors. They never got to go home. Cold night, feeling shackled to my bed. I remember hearing whimpers from the kids, whispers across the room, talking things like, I hope we go home soon. And this is just the first night in my life. I think this is my worst night. I'm just a kid and the test of my will. We get still. I used to cry, but when I block out all my vision with the image on the cloud where I'm living. We're trying to speak. I remember thinking that we never get to meet. Then my mind drifted off and fell asleep. First morning brought food I couldn't eat, and if we didn't, we'd get punished in our seat. This is the life that I had to live in residential school as a kid. Now it's 60 years later, looking back. Kind of funny how my mom remembers that. All the little things that I can't forget. But I'm thankful that I made it every step. And through the years, confronted so many fears, my feelings have been adjusted. I'm telling it to your ears. The elements of my tears are sentiments of the years that I spent with my peers.
When I see you taken away, my heart becomes displaced.
And that's actually what you would call a common residential school experience. That first day of school and not getting a chance to go home. So I'm thankful very much for my parents telling me about that first day of school, because we know those memories can bring up a lot of emotions and a lot of feelings of that they blocked out or that they forgot about. So I want to thank my mother and my father for telling me that story. My uncle actually told me some of that story. All my family went to residential school. But for me, now, my parents grew up and they lived on the reserve, and then they went to residential school, and then they wanted a different life for me. They wanted to ensure that I didn't have those same memories and types of experiences that they had. So we moved here to Regina, Saskatchewan. And I remember my first day of school. I didn't want to go. I was like, no, Mom, I don't want to go. We lived right across the street, actually. You could actually see my house from the school. Like, there's my house right, I could just run across that field. I'll just get home. And then what? So I remember we were going out for recess, and I had this ball, this little ball, and I don't know why they gave us that to play with, but this other bigger kid came and took my ball away from me. It's the exact same ball. Like, why are you taking the same ball, but you're bigger than me? Just to bully me. And I didn't like it, and then I was like, I'm never coming back here. I went home, and I went back the next day, and I'm glad I did go back, because it gave me an opportunity to start making friends outside of my normal house that I would see. And those little experiences of remembering your first day of school and then moving to different schools. And throughout school, I was always the only First Nations kid, the only kid with brown skin. I remember going to my classrooms, grade 1, grade 2, grade 3. And I went to St. Augustine School, which is in Regina. And there was a bus that would come from Poitras First Nation. And it was packed with First Nations kids. So those were my friends. I couldn't wait for the bus to come. The bus would pull up to the school, and I'd be like, yes, I got a friend coming here. So there would be a group of us. There was like maybe one in each class. There was only about 8 or 9 kids that would come from the reserve, but we all hung out together in recesses. But I was always that only First Nations kid in every class that I went into. And I always remember the idea of thinking, maybe this year I have my backpack on, go up to the classroom. Nope, still the only First Nations kid. And I love to play sports. How many of you guys out there love sports? You know, how many? Raise your hand. Yep. I played hockey. I played baseball. My goal was to be a hockey player. I wanted to be an NHL player. There wasn't too many First Nations NHL players either. There was Reggie Leach. We had Gino Ojic. There's only a couple. You can name them all on one hand. And every Native kid knew those Native hockey players, I remember. And then it wasn't until about grade 8. Grade 8 was cool for me, because grade 8 I was actually the big kid. I kind of fit in. I always felt like I didn't belong, because on my hockey teams I was always the only First Nations kid. And I'd hear these things that we call stereotypes. If you guys know what stereotypes are, you know what I'm talking about. Stereotype is just, it's a false statement. And one that I used to hear all the time was, all First Nations people don't work. They don't have a job. I used to hear that all the time. And my parents both worked their whole life, full time. I used to have to go to daycare, and I'd be the only First Nations kid there at daycare. But that hockey team, they became my friends and my family in a different way. You know, it helped me be active. It helped me create teamwork and understand what being on a team was. But even in that change room, I'd hear different comments or different jokes about First Nations people, and then they'd say, no, not you though. You're not that type of First Nation. You know, so that was always there, and I have to just turn my head and try to let it roll off my shoulder and not worry about that. But those little instances are opportunities that I see that I could have said something and spoke up. And right now, with this orange shirt on, that is what we need to do. That's what everybody needs to do. If they hear something like that, say, hey, that's not right. You shouldn't be saying that. You know, and don't go over there and try to start a fight or anything. Just be like, hey, just speak up. And because that shows that you are actually doing something proactively and creating change in your environment. If anything, just changing yourself. And as Tim has always taught me, he's been teaching me that it all starts at home first. It all starts where you are, your group of friends, who you hang out with, who you associate with right away, immediately throughout the day when you're not at home. Those are your immediate people that you should be having those conversations with and saying, hey, no, that's not right. And that's okay. If they don't listen, that's okay. You tried. That's all my messages for that. So I would say this. And then baseball, I was the only First Nations kid. But then grade 9 came, I remember. And grade 9 was kind of like, wow, it's a big school. Grade 8, I was kind of like, hey, grade 3, get out of my way. I'm grade 8. That you couldn't do that when you're grade 9 because there's grade 12s. I remember this one kid pushed me out of the way. I thought it was a teacher. He had a beard and a mustache. I was like, what a mean teacher. What kind of school is this? I found out the kid was in grade 11. He just had a big beard and a mustache. So I was in a different world. But I remember thinking, okay, maybe I'll have a First Nations friend in each class. No, because in grade 9, for those of you that are in grade 8, grade 7, you'll know when you get to grade 9, you don't stay in one class. You go from class to class to class to class for all your classes. So I remember we had math, then I had phys ed, then we had English, still the only First Nations kid. Went to lunch, had something to eat, came back on, I remember right after lunch was music class. I like music. Raise your hand if you actually have a song that you like listening to right now. Your favorite song makes you happy. You listen to a song when you're sad. You listen to a song when you're gaming, when you're playing fart night. Yeah, I said it, fart night. Not Fortnite, fart night. When you're playing that, you know, you all have your favorite songs and your dances that you do. For me, I like rap music. I always liked rap music. And I walked into grade 9 thinking I'll learn some rap. I didn't know how to rap or anything. I just liked listening to it. Put my backpack on, I walked in the door, and then I was like, no First Nations kids anywhere. Oh, there's somebody in the back with brown skin like me. I'll go sit beside this guy. So I went over there, I sat down beside him, had my backpack on, took it off. And the first thing he did was he turned to me like this. Hey, do you like rap music? I was like, yes, I do. Then he said, well, go home. Go home, write a rap song. I'll go home, write a rap song. We'll come back tomorrow and we'll see who wrote a better rap song. I was thinking, what a rude guy. He didn't talk to me for the rest of the class. It was bothering me. Why would somebody tell me to go home? Why do they want me to go write a rap song? Then later on that night, I remember sitting at home thinking, man, that kid is kind of cool. That's a cool kid. It's kind of like when you throw a dog off you, a little puppy dog if you guys have pets, and then just keep jumping back on. That's kind of like, I was like, man, this guy's cool. I want to keep talking to him. So I wrote a rap song, took it to school the next day. He unfolded it on paper because there was no such thing as Wi-Fi. That's right. There was no such thing as the internet. There was no Xbox. There was no PlayStation. Those weren't even thought of yet. There was not even an iPhone. There wasn't even a cell phone. It was like a phone with a cord on it, a string actually with a cup that you go take to your friend's house and then you run the string home and then you talk through it. No, I'm just kidding. But anyways, he opened it up with a paper and he's like, all right, I like it. We could be friends. My name's Jude. And that's how I started writing raps. Every week we would do one, write a rap, take it home, take it back to school, and then we would practice. So I would read the dictionary a lot, try to learn words that rhyme. And now I think back on it, I'm very thankful. So thank you, Jude, for pushing me to be a rapper and learning vocabulary and learning how to spell words properly. There was no such thing as spell check. We used to actually have to write it out and then check it in the dictionary to make sure it was spelled right. So I'm going to do another song for you. This song is called Ira Hayes. Now, Ira Hayes is a war hero. He is a person that was in the United States Army, and he was a very, very important person to World War II, and he received a Purple Heart. He had the Purple Heart for saving all of his battalion members, and they promised him the world. And like many of our residential school survivors or veterans that went over and fought in the war, unfortunately, those promises weren't fulfilled, and he ended up just being by himself on the reserve after that. But it was just overcoming. This song's about overcoming. It's not a story about Ira Hayes. It's just a story about overcoming. So music is my medicine, so we can start it out. This one's called Ira Hayes. I just want to remind everybody, if your classroom has questions or if you want to learn anything, feel free to tell your teacher and get something together, and we'll try to answer them. If not, hopefully I can answer them before you ask. This is called Ira Hayes. I'm like a countertop, standing on a mountaintop, mountain heart, speaking words of spoken word. My speech is art. Sounds absurd nowadays, so I fill the part. As I'm spilling words like liquid at a bar. I'm getting nervous, I might take it too far and start talking about some things I wish I never had to do, or things that I'm doing now, or things that I'm going through. It's like my mind's been darkened with tint. I still see bright, even though it gets dark now and then. and negative forces of polarity make it hard to find clarity in this world filled with sin. We have a world filled with sin, where winners choose to lose before they often win. That's why I'm usually snoozing when opportunity wants to get in, and the doorbell's always broken. Go figure that. Passed out on the couch, no money. Take a swig of that lifestyle of Vanara Hayes. These words are medicine for brighter days. Knock, knock, let us in. The medicine is here and it's better than it was back then. So knock, knock, let us in. Knock, knock, let us in. Knock, knock, let us in. The medicine is here and it's better than it was back then. So knock, knock, let us in. I've reached the age where nowadays I like to reminisce, but not with animosity towards all those things I missed, because everything that I missed wound up with a twist, like not chasing my dream to rap, presented me with a gift to understand where I was and where I am, and how did I get here so fast when that wasn't even the plan? Another reason for me to make it and keep believing, keep moving, continue to do what I believe in, make music and use it to inspire some change. One song at a time, I'm rhyming to rid the pain or your pain. I acknowledge we ain't the same, but this world we're living in, you know, it's the same. We can't change that, but we can change facts. Get our acts together and shift up the game fast. Slow down, hit reset, and just get in the groove. I'm on that feel good, ain't nothing to lose. There ain't nothing to lose, we're on that feel good vibe. Knock, knock, let us in. The medicine is here and it's better than it was back then. So knock, knock, let us in. So that song, it took me 5 years to write, because I wrote it at the beginning and then it finally just came to me one day. It's like music is that therapy for me. So as Tim was talking about before, when we talk about Orange Shirt and what helped him create his identity, it was going back to the culture. And for me, I always say I have multiple cultures in me, but I'm always going to be a First Nations person. That's a given from when I'm born till I move on to the spirit world. And since grade 9, that moment in grade 9, I found another culture, and that culture was hip hop. See, hip hop I consider to be the same as what we would say is any type of culture. First Nations culture, we have music that comes from the drum. That drum's that heartbeat. We could all hear it in our chest, that heartbeat beating every day. We also have the language, whether that be Dakota, Lakota, Cree, Soto, Dene, Michif. We all have a language, and that could be found all over the world. We also have art. And for First Nations people, before contact, before 1492, we used to use what we had in our environment, whether that was berries. We would crush up berries to dye different porcupine quills and make quill work. We would use feathers of different birds. We would use leather from the animals. And hip hop also has a culture, and it's all visual too. That hip hop visual art is graffiti and graph writing. You see it on sides of buildings now with beautiful colors, and it also has movement, and that movement is dance, you know. And for First Nation, we have different types of power dancing. We have men's traditional, women's traditional, women's jingle dress, women's fancy show, men's chicken dance, men's grass dance, men's fancy dance. So there's all these different types of movements that happen that create our culture. And for me, First Nations, that's the dances that I recognize. But as a hip hop artist, hip hop has those cultures too. And those cultures are the culture of dance. That art form of dance comes in popping and locking and power moves. And there's all these different little pieces of the puzzle that make me realize what identity is. And all of this day that we're celebrating with Orange Shirt Day, it all can come together, and I can express my appreciation for these stories from our residential school survivors through songs. And because they've had to overcome what we would say is a lot of obstacles, but it's also created a lot of opportunities like today for us to be able to speak about residential schools and listen to knowledge keepers and listen to those who have firsthand memories and experiences of being in those environments. So my message to you guys today is we're all going to have opportunities like that. We all have obstacles. Maybe you love to play sports. Maybe you want to go into the junior hockey league. Maybe you might get a scholarship. Maybe you might be really good at science and you might get an opportunity to go to one of Canada's best universities, or teach overseas, but all of those will make us think about home. We'll have this, you might get worried, you might get scared, maybe you're from a small town and you're like, I don't know if I can make it in a big city. I'm gonna tell you this, you gotta ask yourself, what's the worst that can happen? You know what the worst thing is? You go there, you don't like it, you try it, you might not like it, you get to come home. We always get to come home. And that home, whether that's in Treaty 6, Treaty 10, Treaty 4, we all get to come home, and that's the most important part for us. Unlike a lot of residential school survivors, they never got a chance to go home. So I'm gonna say take that opportunity, because if you don't, then you always ask yourself, why didn't I do that? I could have did this. So I'm gonna do one more song for you. It's called What's the Worst? And this song is just about like how I like rap, because if it wasn't for rap, I wouldn't be here today talking to you. And education played a big part in my life. I rapped throughout my whole education at university. So it is possible, if you like music or sports, to do education as well. This is What's the Worst. It's about overcoming. This is like I just like to rap sometimes, because I've been down in the dirt. You had no trouble with work. What's the worst? What's the worst? What's the worst? What's the worst that could happen? I'm feeling like $1 million when I'm rapping. Got a body full of aches and pains from year after year after year against the grain. And when I'm here, like you hear, it ain't the same. Got a fear from the fear or the fame. I don't know, just something to speculate. But I'm excited, kind of like it's a second date. I had to pause for a moment to rejuvenate. Clear my soul, get rid of my anger and hate. Now it's clear though, I see the light at the end of the tunnel. No need to fumble the way you fear hope. Now I'm fearless. Feel this, listen to my melody. Everybody can hear this. Close your eyes, dream big and imagine. Tell me, what's the worst that can happen? Been down in the dirt, fell down when it hurt, climbed out of the rubble, now no trouble with work. What's the worst? What's the worst? What's the worst that can happen? Been down in the dirt, fell down when it hurt, climbed out of the rubble, now no trouble with work. What's the worst? What's the worst? What's the worst that can happen? What's the worst? What's the worst that can happen? What's the worst? What's the worst that can happen? Yep, this track's got me thinking back. When I used to be analoging with Cracker Jack. When I used to be analyzing my raps, and the only thing that mattered was my name on the map. Now it's gone, moving on along my life path. Put my soul in a song so I could fight back. Whether or whether not you like that, I ain't going nowhere, no need to write back. Ups and downs and ups, drinks and cups. Drugs are tough, enough's enough. Call the bluff on the fake and show the world what you're made of. I got my heart full of heaven in. I'm new to my surroundings, so let me settle in. Kick back, tell stories, start laughing. What's the worst that can happen? Been down in the dirt, fell down when it hurt, climbed out of the rubble, now no trouble with work. What's the worst? What's the worst? What's the worst that can happen? So yeah, go after your dreams. That's the big thing. I want to actually answer some questions here, if there are some questions. I'm just gonna grab these questions here. Tim, did you want to join me sitting over here? We're gonna move right here back to our safe space. So we have a question here from Massey, grade 7 and 8. Okay, so I guess this is to you, Tim. How did you feel when you returned to your family after leaving boarding school?
Well, it was kind of, that's a good question, because I even forgot I had older brothers and sisters. So it was to try and reconnect with them and find something in common was sometimes a big struggle. So it was struggling to go to school. It was struggling to come back home to your environment.
So was your relationship the same with them before you went to school, or was it different?
I'd say it was very much different, because even though we were in the same institution, you would forget about your older brothers and families and sibling group. It would just kind of fade away.
Wow. Another one they have here is, so do you know anyone who tried to escape? Did you try to escape?
I tried to run away once and got a severe beating. So we had some pretty harsh caregivers. I know when I first started school, it was under the Catholic Church, and then it became Indian run, and a lot of the Indian caregivers ran it the same way they went to school. So that's how they seen it.
Another question they have here is, were there any good nuns there?
Oh yeah, Sister Mary was an awesome nun. I know I talked about Sister Rainey being very harsh. I remember it was kind of sad when I look at it today. She was sick with cancer, and then when they come and told us, I forgot about that until one of my good relatives, Mickey Ryder, said, remember when Sister Rennie died, we all clapped and we were happy, and then we got severely punished. After her, we had Sister Mary. That one was really a loving nun. So there were good and bad, like in any circle, any group of people, there was good and bad times to be had.
Do you know how you said you had your number was 21, your first one? Do you know how they assigned those numbers at all, or did they just?
I was the 21st student to come in to register. So what people don't realize in the industrial school, what they signed was an admittance for application. What that was is a legal document denouncing their rights as parents over to the churches. So there's way more to residential school than what our students can comprehend in just a short discussion.
Look, I know. That makes me think here too. There's lots of other things within the residential school. You're pretty good with working hard. You see, at the time
I can
you
play
guys
him out.
played me out one summer. We were cutting wood. I don't know how he did it. I thought I was young and ready to give her. I had almost passed out outside.
Almost had heat stroke.
Is there you're hard to work hard, then I guess would you say that in order to get where you are today, you have to work twice as hard because of residential school?
And we've talked about this at many sweats. Being a residential school survivor, being Indigenous, First Nation. When I was a kid, they called us Indian. I had to prove to the whites that I could work even harder than their people, but more so my own, to show them that I could compete on the outside. So I did lots of construction as a young man. I did lots of different things, and I still do, but I need to let them know that I can work just as hard, if not harder, than physically, mentally, emotionally, to survive in their environments.
You touched about this too. You said they would sign over. The parents would have to sign over authority to you, I guess.
To the church.
Yeah, to the church. Why did parents send their children to these schools?
Well, it was law. So these are historical policies from historical governments that if they didn't surrender their children to the Catholic, the Anglican, the United, the Protestant churches, their parents could have been thrown in jail. So those were policies of the day that inherit the short negative comings of intergenerational impacts.
I always like to think about this. I know we say it's it's just the way it is right now.
Or Hatchatulo.
Yeah. What do you think? We're on the right path to strengthen our identity as First Nations people right now with things like Orange Shirt Day and.
Well, Orange Shirt Day is a good start, but we've been talking with government in different areas for the last 35 years. We need to start seeing change. We just had a standoff with a young man trying to do something about mental health and well-being, and we need to really start putting our money where our mouth is. And then they whine to the federal government that they're not being heard. Well, Indigenous, now they get a chance to see what Indigenous people are going through with.
So what can teachers do then? What can they do in their classrooms?
The teachers can bring in residential school survivors that when they sign those agreements to teach treaties from K to 12, they were supposed to have residential school survivors to help them with the content. So I encourage them to do that wherever, whenever, however possible.
So let's do something. Let's do something for the schools out there. Let's teach them something. Maybe something in the language. You mentioned Ochete Shikoi Oyate.
Ochete Shikoi Oyate.
And that is the people of the seven coastal fires.
Which were the Lakota Nakota peoples.
Well, what's another term that they can?
Well, let's there's a short prayer. If I can leave all of the students with a short prayer. When you speak fluent language, you'd say mitak oye oyasin. But when you're a fluent speaker, you can cut vowels, so we say mitak yasin. It means that you're related to the trees, the plants, the animals. You're related to all of the four-legged, the winged ones. It's a short prayer in itself. Again, mitak yasin. Mitak yasin.
Well, let's all try it. Mitak yasin.
So with that, have a good day. Doksha ke.
Doksha ke means later.
See you later.